All right, Joel, thanks for being with us here today. You put a lot of time and effort into becoming what you are. I know that you run a extremely successful accounting firm. A lot of time and energy went behind it. We're going to talk a little bit about what you do, but maybe before we get there, fill us in on what it took to get to where you're at. What do I need to do? What time and energy has gone into becoming a CPA, to becoming an EA? What happens to be in the spot where you can help people the way that you do?
Well, it probably starts back, if we go way back, it probably starts back at school, right? So in order for me to be a CPA, I had to graduate with my undergraduate, which was in accounting, and then I had to get my master's degree in accounting. And then I had, because when I'm in the state of Utah, then I had to work for 2,000 hours underneath the CPA, and then I could sit for the CPA exam back when I took it, 4 parts, you do it all at once. But then you had to pass that, and then even after you pass it and they give you your license, we have to do at least 40 hours of education per year in order to keep my license.
Okay.
So it's an ongoing process that just kind of starts back in college, but never really ends until I finally retire.
Never stops.
Right? Never stops.
And then you have years like 2017, 18, where there's massive overhauls that I'm sure a lot more time than that 40 hours a week goes into.
Oh yeah, right. So that's just to keep my license. If we're talking about tax code as well, that's a never-ending process. It's constant learning. It's understanding kind of the small intricacies of how things tie together, how things flow together if we're working with small businesses and their entity setup versus how everything flows back to their personal tax return, where it's taxed. There's just a lot that goes into it. And honestly, I could spend an entire lifetime just sitting there in front of my computer reading tax code and court cases and IRS bulletins and all these things to try to kind of keep up with the current status of things. So when we have these massive tax overhauls, it's like setting the bar at ground zero again. Now I got to build my pieces back up, learning how things have changed, and then trying to inform my clients as best I can based on the new codes.
So I'm glad you do that so I don't have to, right?
You don't want to do that, right? you let people like me do that. You go out, you make your money, and then you let me do what I do, which is learn the code.
So you spend a lot of time in your life, and I know you, building up that well to draw on to be able to help your clients. We're going to talk a little bit about tax time. We're in tax time right now. We're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. But I think maybe before we get to tax time, it's important for people to understand what you're doing with your clients outside of tax time. I know you're not spending 4 days a week golfing. I know that's not you.
In fact, I used to golf, and I'd say, no, I don't golf anymore. I don't have time.
You can't, right?
No, I don't have time.
And I know a lot of people out there only see their accountant at tax time. Let's talk about what should be happening. I know it doesn't happen with every business owner and every CPA, but what do you think should be happening outside of tax time to prepare for tax time?
So outside of tax time, you should definitely be meeting with your CPA. If they're only open from January through about the end of April, I would say find someone else.
Yeah.
Because all the work that goes into your tax return happens typically the rest of the year, right? So you should be meeting them, going over where's my business, what are my revenues and my expenses, am I tracking my expenses correctly, have I included my revenue correctly, or even my categories within my chart of accounts correct? Yeah. What are they telling me from a cash flow standpoint? I love financial statements when I look at them. Clients bring them into me. I know it sounds weird, but the truth of the matter is all the numbers tell me a story. And so I can start looking at numbers, and then I'll start asking them questions. Hey, I see this going on, and they'll say, oh yeah, nice that you noticed that, and then we can go through and talk about it. Because the financial statements really tell me a story about how you're conducting your business and what you're doing. So that is really interesting to me, but all the tax planning happens during the year. So when we hit tax time, really it's just about compliance. It's about taking what we did last year, and now I'll go in and I'll actually comply with the law, fill out the forms that need to be submitted, and kind of submit them to the state and the IRS. So,
I think about like a football game. We just had the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always intrigued at those in-game adjustments that happen. Here you are, it looks like one team goes down, and then a coaching staff makes some adjustments, and all of a sudden they come roaring back. And as I listen to you talk, it sounds to me like that's a lot of what's going on. You're helping business owners make those in-game adjustments so that at the end of the day, they have the winning formula.
Right, so if we're in tax time right now, someone comes into my office, they sit down with me and they say, Joel, how can I reduce my taxes for last year? my response would be, why were we not visiting last year?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's as you said, the adjustments. That's when all those little things happen. Because we're for the most part, right? Most people are calendar-based taxpayers.
Yeah.
So we have to report what we did during that year. And so if you're seeing me now and asking me what I can do last year, it's kind of too late for the most part. I mean, there are a few things, but for the most of the work has to happen during the year.
So that's what's happening outside of the year. What's happening right now? We're in tax season right now. What do you do right now? I mean, I know it's a lot of hours, but outside of that, what are you doing? Right?
Don't see my family. I don't do much except sit in my office and meet with people. But right now, it's all about kind of making sure people comply with the code, right? Comply with what they need to do. And I know that sounds simplistic, but there are all kinds of things that the IRS sets in place that you need to hit in order to avoid penalties, in order to avoid interest. We're looking at what type of entities do my clients have? Are we filing extensions? What are the extension dates? I mean, there's lots to do right now to make sure they hit with all the compliance rules, because if we don't do that, it's money out of their pocket, and none of us want that.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it sounds like right now is the culmination of bringing together all those pieces from the year, and really doing your best to keep as many dollars in that business owner's pocket as they can. I mean, you know as good as anybody how important cash flow is to business. You know as good as anybody what those dollars mean to a small business owner. And right now seems to me to be the execution, that final execution piece of the plan that was put together.
Right. It's like submitting the report, filing it, being done. But really, I like to think that the tax return itself shouldn't actually be that difficult. Because if we've set everything in motion and we've prepared the proper way and we've documented everything appropriately during the year, finally when they sit down with me, well, I already know where everything is, right? So I already know where your documents are. I already know what's going on within your business. I can just take your financials and the various kind of documents that I need, and then I can just go in and complete your tax return because all the work had already been done.
You know, one of the terms I've heard your team throw around is this idea of forward taxation versus looking in the rearview mirror, right? You're a big proponent of looking forward to say, hey, what's coming down the pipe, what's happening, so that there aren't any surprises, because we can control what's in front of us and we can't control what's behind us.
That's right. So even as simplistic as a deadline, for example, I know March 15th is approaching. I know that's a deadline. I know I can do certain things to avoid any problems with that deadline. March 16th hits. Well, if I didn't do what I was supposed to do, then it's going to be a problem.
Well, at the end of the day, make sure you're spending time with your accountant, not just during these beginning months of the year, but let's make sure that we're putting the time and energy in with our accountant so that at the end of the day, we keep as many dollars, as many hard-earned dollars in our pocket as we possibly can, right?
Exactly.
We know how important it is for you to keep your business running smoothly. Here at Tax Hive, we can help with all of your tax and business service needs so you can focus in on what it is that you do best. Our entire team of experts is standing by, ready to help out. Schedule a strategy session with one of our experts today.